So for this video, we're going to be talking about audio. Now, if you select your main camera, you're going to see a component called audio listener. Well, the audio listener's job is to, listen for audio. We just need to play those audio clips. Well, how do we do that? Well, we can apply something called an audio source. So on the main camera, I'm going to add a component. I'll type in audio and we get audio filters and then right here, audio source. Now we can select the audio source and we can give it, what audio do we want to play? So if I look in the asset folder, audio, medieval fantasy, ambience, loops. So here you're going to see some loops of sounds and you can click one, press play to hear it. But we can give our audio source that file. So we just click and drag that loop. I'm going to stick with the forest loop because I have a foresty background. Actually, I think I like the mountain loop. So I'm going to use the mountain loop. You can pick whichever one you want. In fact, you can even put music in here if you want to. I just didn't include really any audio music files. You can set that up. And then here you can adjust the different settings. So the output, I'm not going to worry about that yet. Mute, bypass effects, blah, 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 loop. So loop means that once the audio plays once, it will go back to the beginning. This is a looped file, so it can be played over and over again. So I'll select loop and turn that on. And now I'll press play. And I have audio. It's really loud though. Well, let's first off go in here and top right corner here. You can mute it by pressing that button. So the audio will still be happening, but if you don't want to listen to it all the time, you can turn that off to mute it. I'm going to unmute it for the sake of this. I'm going to go back down into my audio source and I'm going to lower the volume by, for me, a lot, but you can do what makes, what sounds good for you. So that might still be too loud for the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and lower it even more. But again, have your values be what makes sense for you. So that works for a basic background audio. You can add in music just the same way. All you have to do is import the file. But now I want to add in some triggered sound effects. Like if I get a health pack, it should play like a power up sound. If I'm jumping, it should play a sound, things like that. Well, for that, it's going to be a little more complicated. Now for this, we're going to need something called a sound effects manager. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new empty called Sound FX Manager. And I'm going to set the position for this to be 0, 0, 0. And then I'm going to go to my asset folder, scripts, right click, create new, and I'll call it new meta behavior scripts. I'll call this Sound FX Manager. Go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio. This Sound Effects Manager is going to be referred to as something called a singleton. So this is a singleton. Singleton is a programming concept, which we'll go in depth a little bit later, where we only ever have one instance of this object, as in this will only exist one time in our scene. We can never have it again. To do this, we're going to set it to public, static, and then we're going to do Sound FX Manager. So we put the exact name that our class is called, and I'll call this instance. So this is an instance of our Sound Effects Manager. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of both update and start. We don't need these. Instead, what I'm going to do is do private void awake. And then we'll do if instance equal null, instance equals this. Now, this is a fairly weird looking thing, but this says if the only single instance of this does not exist, make it. Otherwise, don't make a new one. Now, this is referred to as a design pattern. A programming design pattern is, you can think of it as like a template for things that you can do, where people have already solved some fairly complex problems. And if you just kind of follow what they do, you're pretty set. You don't have to worry about it then. Now, for this to work, we need to create a audio source. So I'm going to do a serialized field, private, audio source, and I'll call it sound FX object. So we're going to create the sound effects manager, and we can attach a sound effects object to it. Now we just need to make it play something. So I'll do a new function called public void play sound FX clip. This function is going to take in a couple things. So first off, it's going to take in an audio clip, and we'll call it audio clip. Now we'll get into finishing this up in a little bit, but for now, all I'm going to do is have it say debug.log sound effect played. All right, so from here, we're going to have more to add to this, but this is enough to kind of help get things connected. So I'll go back to Unity. I will select my sound effects manager, add component, add script, sound effects manager. Now, a sound effects manager needs an audio sound effect. To do that, I'm going to go to assets and prefabs and just open this up. We're going to need it in a minute. With our prefab folder open, all I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse this out. I'm going to right click in my hierarchy, create empty, and I'll call this sound FX object. I'm going to position to be 0, 0, 0. All I'm going to do is add an audio source. Now, what that source is, we can actually define later. We don't need to worry about that for right now. Once that's been created, I'm going to take my sound FX object and drag that into my prefab folder. This turns this into a prefab. So I can delete the sound effects object. I don't need it anymore because I have the prefab. I can add in more if I want to later, but I don't want to do that. I then go to my sound effects manager, grab my prefab and drag that into the sound effects object. So it will, when we trigger it to play a sound effect, it will create a prefab, play the sound, and then we'll set it to destroy that sound afterwards. Now that's great and all, but how do we actually trigger a sound? Well, I'm just going to have it trigger a sound. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So I'm going to go to my scripts folder and I'll open up player collisions. And I want it set to where if I hit a health pickup, let's have it play a sound. So when I do a health pickup, I'm going to have it call the sound effects manager, sound FX manager dot instance dot play sound effects clip, parenthesis and semicolon. What this is doing, it says, hey, grab the sound effects manager, grab that instance of the sound effects manager because this is a singleton. We can only have one thing. And then have it play a sound effects. Now, we need to make a clip for it to play. So I'll scroll to the top. I'm going to create a new variable and I'll have it be public audio clip heal And then when I actually trigger the heal sound effect, I will do play sound effects clip, heal sound. Go back into Unity. I will go to my player character. And in my player collision script, I have a space for heal sound. Well, let's find a sound we can do. So I'm going to go to Medieval Fantasy Pack SFX2. And let's try items and miscellaneous. Let's scroll down, and there's some different like potion sounds. So I like potion drink A, but you can make a different sound if you want to. So I'm going to go back to my player character, find that player collision script, and I'm going to drag potion drink A in there. It won't play the sound yet, but let's see if this works. We'll press play. I'll open up my console. And if I pick up my health pack, sound effect played. Yay, which is the message we told it to play. We just need to make it actually play the actual sound now. So to do that, I'm going to go to my sound effects manager. And in here where I have play sound effects clip, I'll delete this debug message. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do audio source, and then I'll call it audio source, is equal to instantiate, so create an instance of. To instantiate is to create an instance of the sound FX object, semicolon at the end. Then we'll do audio source dot play. So the instantiate object command needs a few different things. We need to give it a location as well as set the volume and things like that. So in our parameters for a function, we have our audio clip. We need to also pass in a transform, spawn transform. So we're saying, hey, where do you want this to show up at? We have the transform with the position, rotation, and scale. We're saying, hey, where do we want to actually play that sound from? Well, we want to play that from the location of, in this case, our character. But we might want to define somewhere else later. Once we have this spawn transform, we need to also pass in a float for the volume. So how loudly we want it to play. So in our audio source where we instantiate, after sound effects object, I'm going to pass in the spawn transform dot position. So get the position of the thing we're about to play. And then we're going to pass in a quaternion dot identity. This is a math thing you do not need to worry about. This is just the rotation of where it's at. Under there, I'm going to do audio source dot clip is equal to the audio clip. So whatever sound we want to play, we need to actually say, hey, this is the sound we want you to play. We do our audio source dot volume is equal to volume. So we set the volume in our audio source to the volume we pass in, and then we can play it. Now if I hit save, I have to go back to my player collision script and I need to give it more values. So our function now requires the transform and volume. So after heal sound, after the clip, I'll say, I want to pass in this object's transform and a volume of 1. So play the sound effect at the location of the player, the volume of 1. Now if I press play, it played the sound effect. That was too loud for what I want it to be. So now I just go back and adjust it, bring the volume down to 0.5. And you can see that it created a sound effects object with potion drink A. So it created a new object in our hierarchy. But that just exists there now. The sound's done. It should go away. Well, to do that, all we have to do is inside of our sound effects manager, after we play the sound, we can just tell it to destroy itself. So I'm going to create a float clip length is going to be equal to the audio sources dot clip dot length. So it'll get the length of that sound effect. And then we can destroy the audio sources dot game object. So we can destroy the audio source, and with the destroy function, we can define how long we want it to last. I want it to destroy after the clip length has happened. So if the clip is 3 seconds long, it will destroy that audio object after 3 seconds. So once I pick this up, it created the sound effect of the object and then destroyed that object afterwards. So that's pretty cool. Now there's plenty of other sound effects we can add in, and we can also set it to kind of play random sounds and things like that. So that's it for this one. Thanks.